Can you hear me now?
Yes. Hopefully third
Okay.
time's the charm here.
Yeah, the internet gods or the ghosts or the ancestors to say, she's talking too much now.
They're not on our side now.
She jacked for an hour almost already.
Well,
Now you know how hard it is to get a story out because you end up with stories within a story, which then leads to other things. And it comes back around eventually sometimes. And sometimes the internet catches it. And sometimes
right.
it goes, you're even fogging my own little wires.
Yeah, but it was just too much for Zoom to handle, I suppose.
Might be, yeah. But yeah, so that's why it's hard to put things in a written story
Mhm.
because, you know, when an elder or someone's sharing, story sharing, a lot of times it will trigger a memory and then they'll hop into that memory and share that, then hop back and, you know, and that's where I'm hoping with the animation that we'll be able to do that a little bit better. I know I'm dyslexic myself, so when I see something, it works for me,
Mhm.
you know. But if someone was to write it out and tell and I read it and it's like, oh, I don't even I don't get it, right?
Mhm.
It doesn't stick in the brain. But I remember one time telling the story of how the seed got over the mountain, and these kids had been they listened. They were in the garden and that at the school and stuff, and so they listened to a story how the seed got over the mountain, and they hadn't been in the garden that whole time. But I remember the teacher being all excited about this one boy. And I said, well, why? She goes, because he is a handful. She's like eight entertained enough. But as soon as we said we're coming out to the garden, he goes, I remember. Goes, I remember the story. And as they were out there, I said, do you remember the story? He goes, yeah, I remember the story. I said, then I'll let you tell it. So I let him tell the story. And he told the story on how the seed got over the mountain. And he was so proud of himself as he had everything right. And he remembered every little detail. And the teacher was just astonished. She's like, I've never seen him so calm and so collected as when he was in the garden. Right. So it just calmed him right down. And there again, he remembered the story, even though he had heard it 5 years before. And that feels good, right? And when a kid comes back to you and says, I remember that. And then they remember the seeds have to go through stratification in order to germinate. And sometimes we too have to go through a bit of stratification for us to learn and to grow. So sometimes when something bad happens, not to look at it as something bad, but maybe it's something that can open your eyes to something else, you know, that open your life up, you know, stratify you. And yeah, uh, so it's good, you know. So I'm hoping that the mammoth and hop back to the time now and show how, you know, stories may vary slightly, but the stories are there to help us to remember how to do things, when to do things. Because if we would have written it down in a book, that book would be so thick, no one would be able to carry it, right? But that's why we had knowledge carriers and knowledge keepers, and usually they were the ones that held the stories. And so my auntie told me, she said, that's why when I came and took the kids, we knew you'd come back. We knew you'd come back, and your travels will have taught you many things that we never would have been able to teach you here.